Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title of today's episode is Restlessness on the Move. And I wanted to share a very interesting idea, and this episode is being spoken in a mystical context. So anybody who doesn't want their view on existence to change most likely shouldn't listen to this episode. But anyways, in the subtitle I have written, could life just be about seeing, hearing, feeling? This was an observation I made last night after a talk I gave, where I was just watching, like I give these talks on my balcony, and I look outside. I look at the landscape in front of me. And for a moment last night, after an episode, I was just sitting there in my moment of being, and I was just watching. And for a moment, I was like, let's say I forgot every idea that was ever in conception for a moment, and who would I be? What is going on in this earth, And I classified it in a very interesting way, where I realized everything that we call human life is a relationship of a dimension of sight, a dimension of hearing, and a dimension of sensation. That means if a person closed their eyes, their sense of touch and their sense of hearing would be active. Now, the other senses are there, of course, but I'm focusing on these three as the primary realm creators, or information of the realm. We are a restless creature. This cannot be avoided. That means existing is not enough. We have to live. And when it comes to living, we're choosing what percentage of it is conscious and what percentage of it is unconscious. If life becomes a very cruel and messed up place, then I would say most people will live unconsciously. Why? Because who wants to see something unpleasant? Right? So the more unpleasant the world becomes, the more our eyes want to, in some sense, avoid it. Excuse me. So, sight, hearing, and sensation, when they infuse, they create our world. We find human expressionism in these channels. And something on a parallel line to connect to this, I have personally in this life, due to being a person who has a multidimensional narrative behind his eyes, I have spoken to people who consider themselves to be psychic, people who consider to be accessing some different state other than the human experience. And if you pay attention, for example, there are certain channelers in Mount Shasta area in the New Age community, I would say. And they are in some sense people who feel that invisible extraterrestrials are around them, and when the person sits down to speak, it's the invisible extraterrestrial speaking. Now, the only thing that the person can relay is trying to share vision that is foreign to the moment. The person can feel like they're hearing, somebody's spirit, somebody's, dead relative or something, or the person can in some sense communicate the sensation of the thought construct. I personally have an experience with altered states. I have an experience with states of being that are dehumanized. There's many. A person can become dehumanized if you speak to them as if they're not a human. A A person can be dehumanized if you never see them. A person can become dehumanized if their efforts are not responded to. This is just nature, right? And it has to do with the inner character of the person, because when we wake up, we are like this process of nature that is animating itself, and we animate ourselves based on the auditory information we receive, in some sense, visual information, and the sensational information. So sensational, Somebody once said, what is the difference between information and data? This was a good distinction somebody once made, where they're like, okay, data is you can say it's kind of like information is data that can be used. It's data that once the person has, it in some sense opens up an avenue of expression. So a question has found the chat section. Michael C says, leaving our sensations and our coughs. No, I'm joking. He's not saying it. He says, Michael says, leaving our sensations and perceptions open to experience from other realities. Yeah. So here's the challenge, Michael. In response to your question in this chat section, it's not that there are other realities, it's how our perception is creating the reality. When I use the antenna metaphor, this is a totally different approach to the human being. This approach to the human being is in some sense being like looking at what you are, and when that updates, the reality you have access to updates. It's kind of like saying the person decides to be a soccer player, then everywhere they go, they coincidentally see a soccer game. It was the same thing where there was this saying that they would say that it was, for example, for people in the streets. I personally haven't been raised in the streets, but you listen to media and you hear stories and vision. And so there was this idea that if, for example, somebody gets a gun, they open up their reality to all the other realities where that object is present. Let's say a person decides to be the most compassionate person. You might suddenly see the Dalai Lama by Tuesday. What I mean by what I mean is that it's kind of like the content, that the type of information that you hold forms you to receive the type of information you can. So I would say, let's just kind of simplify this. I'm saying that is life just imagine life is a point, and there is 3 lines connected to this point. Sight, auditory perception, visual perception, and touch. Now, something fascinating I've noticed is that when it comes to the inner realms, a person can visualize like Achilles from like across the planet. This is poetic, of course. Achilles throwing a spear, and let's say Achilles throws his spear into the air, towards something, but Achilles has actually thrown his spear to the future, and this spear travels through the future. Future is still traveling, and imagine right now as I'm giving this talk, Achilles' spear is just about to hit me, and in my inner realms I hold it from the tip, just hold the spear in mid-air, Poetically, what I'm trying to say is that in the inner realm, there could be visual and auditory information that in some sense makes our sensation change. That means a person can be given a pleasant image and a person can be given an unpleasant image. When I was younger, I was way more open to talking about what is unpleasant, but then I realized, where is the attention of the human being going, especially after imagery is shared? Because really, on some level, speaking is information sharing, and information is a film at best. The restlessness is this game of information processing. That means it's like, it's like a person hearing the concept of enlightenment, looking at an endless sky and being like, am I really enlightened? Is the world enlightened? Is the universe enlightened? And it's like, imagine a person's like, oh man, it takes a lifetime for a person to get enlightened. Imagine how long it takes for a planet, for a galaxy, for a universal sector to become self-conscious. Really what it is that the brain is like a photo album. And when we select or zoom in on one of the photos, can become a film, and that's how we remember a memory. There's a lot of systems, I'm not kidding, in our current society and world, there is a lot of regression-based systems. I have both been introduced to different types of these, a type of regressive inner work, where the person's trying to go to the source of how they are a mind even in the first place. And then there's a type of regressive work, which I find this regressive work to be a bit inferior, because it is trying to find who the person was before they were a person. And if the person is looking for a personality, sure, it's like select any kind of past life you want from an energetic universe. The idea is not to discover who you are, is to discover what is going on before we were a who. As a energetic creature, we cannot ignore continuity. When it comes to a shaped entity, the meaning of life has to do with shapes. But when it comes to an entity that is realizing all the forms that it has identified, the way we're being in formation right now, it is in space. It is in mystery. So it's like a human being living a life so far, based on knowledge, then it's as if somebody suddenly says, hey, look, what's that over there? And everybody looks and they realize it is the unknown. So the unknown is a very fundamental component or a part of sense creation and what happens with our senses. Right now, sure, I'm sitting here giving a podcast. The title of the episode, I had a vision of it before I began speaking, and when I began speaking, I'm just sharing that vision. However, if I was to be honest and tell you, dear listener, who is speaking to you right now, unfortunately, I cannot pinpoint reality in regards to what is actually happening in this moment. That means it's very difficult for me to say, am I an interdependent expression of the whole universe, or am I just me in this whole universe? That is a very complex problem to solve, because if I was the whole universe right now, there would be no Mr. Within. There would just be how every person's mind is a mirror of their realism. But if I was Mr. Within right now, then I'm a person with a specific idea, with a specific, global agenda. Because I'll be honest, my vision is to usher in the advanced civilization by igniting an era of advanced communication. When advanced communicators expand, what's going to happen is, for the first time, our inner realms are going to catch on fire in a poetic sense. The Buddha says, You know, it gives this imagery where in this life you are like a candle, and when you share the fire of the candle with other candles, your fire doesn't diminish and the fire of others increases. That means when the human being chooses through an angle of advanced communication try to share the edge of the system of reality, everybody else in reality is automatically, a suggestion of the edge of the system is made in their mind. And so when the questions begin right now, civilization is content with answers. We are looking for answers, But I will tell you, an advanced civilization and an advanced communicators that will bring that advanced civilization, they are not looking for answers. They are looking for questions, and they are meditating on questions to the degree that they are discovering the multidimensional nature of reality, how anything can have multiple angles. That means we have never known anyone. We have only seen a fragment of their expressionism. Michael C. in the chat section says, why can't it be both? Why can't you be the reality that perceives? First of all, if it's both of them, it can be neither, because each is defined by their own boundary. That means it's like saying a person is both good and bad. Sure, if you look at it in different moments in time, yeah, one moment the person was bad, one moment the person is good, and if you want to take the average, sure, you could come up with some sort of artificial morality. But the reason it can't be both is because in order to be aware of the opposites, you have to be in a state that is watching the dualism. That means the only way I know I am a mind and a body right now is because there is something aware of the body. I am seeing my physical body. Even there's a sensation. It's as if it's like, where is the experience of touch? It's like empty space, experiencing everything in it as itself, right? So now in it is a dualistic, let's say, idea. So it's kind of saying that there is no such thing as a good or bad person, but there is a state where you can infinitely perceive something as good and infinitely perceive something as bad. And it's kind of saying like, if we are the body, how do we know we're a mind? If we are the mind, how do we know we're a body? And then how do we know we're a mind and body at the same time? You see, that's the biggest challenge. What in reality is moving as life? And it's really playful. That's the coolest thing. That means I am sometimes so happy that our species has humor. Can you imagine our species being super serious about everything? You know how many wars would start? It's like two people, imagine that in the future. I'll tell you this, right now the species is like two people walking in the street and then their shoulders hitting each other. That can start a war if those two people were world leaders, But in the future, there will be tolerance and patience, and we will build a civilization where anger and violence are inferior remnants of past civilizations. And being a human being is not easy. Why? Because of what do you do with all of this information? There was a man who I honor by the name of Jordan Peterson. I feel he's a very incredible human being. And Jordan Peterson, in his book 12 Rules of Life, one of the rules is like, clean your room. I think it's the first rule. It's as if he's had a daughter and he's told his daughter at some point in her life, clean your room. And so now it's a sort of global wisdom, But the issue with cleaning your room is that if your room was the whole universe, how do you clean the room? That's another way of saying, how do you organize a universal event inside like a couple pound flesh of a brain? Right? Because that's that. If I wanted to be, true to the secular, that's what's going on. We are an object with a ridiculous capability to not be an object to itself, and we have to figure out what this is. And it's not enough to just ascribe personality to neurons, to neural movement in the brain, even though it's as if like our consciousness is like Thor, and there is like there was this show, this anime where in it there was a scene where there was this warrior, and this just fearless warrior, next level warrior that was destined to fight the gods in the show. And so this warrior suddenly in his childhood is walking past this giant tree, and he sees lightning hit this tree, and this giant tree goes into flames in an instant. And this kid, instead of getting scared of the sound of the lightning, he gets fascinated. His warrior soul gets fascinated that who is that in the sky that is fighting, and the effect of his fighting is like lightning strikes in the sky, right? So you can say thunder was a way that man's mind personified the universal event, as if thunder strike, it's as if Zeus is angry or Thor is late to work or something. You know what I mean? So we cannot clean the room of universal information. We cannot 100% totally understand this system. So we have to have patience, and patience translates as humor. Sometimes I look at stand-up comedians and I'm like, wow, so many people see the stand-up comedian, but some people watch stand-up comedy to see the reaction of the audience, not the behavior of the comedian. Because the audience, in some sense, has to be the eyes of the abyss before there is format or a storyline presented. That means it's as if before the comedian has said the joke, it's like, what is there to laugh at? There is nothing. It's just sight waiting for sight. I feel that technology will ultimately enhance these three channels in regards to our sight. It's like the eyes are divine, the ears are divine, and the whole body, of course, is divine. Come on. Every surgeon has a sort of confirmation of there in this world being a supreme intelligence, not a supreme intelligence as if there's a God that has leashed man, or will unleash man. I will say there is no personality of a God. There is just an intelligent presence of activity. This intelligent presence of activity, it is so genius that I don't have to think about my biology. Like, isn't that strange, guys? This is really the hard problem of consciousness, where, David Chalmers, kind of did something smart as a human being and made this idea popular. But the notion is, why is it that we have conscious control over certain biological functions and we don't have conscious control over certain biological functions? Like, people don't have to think about, like, they don't have to tell their stomach, digest. The stomach involuntarily, as the function of the body, digests food. The people don't have to think about themselves breathing. They don't have to think about, their heart beating. These are things that involuntarily on their own are happening. And so a great way to approach the intelligence of this universal sector is to be patient enough to understand how it is automated. Because once something is automated, in some sense, it can never die. It is like nature's jurisdiction of destiny. My body belongs to nature. The elemental human experience is like rent-a-karma. You've rented a karmic vehicle, and you are, on tour in a world you have never been before. The evolution of the eyes will lead us to cyberspace and the exploration of the edge of the universe. The evolution of the ears will lead us to trying to understand why we are seeing. That means, imagine, our senses, they happen at the same time. We receive all our senses at the same time, in a sense. But let me just tell you something insane. For a second, let's just fathom that the senses came consecutively. That means first there was just the eyes, there was no ears. And for like a long period in evolution, the creature was just seeing but had nothing to hear. Right? Then the moment ears developed, suddenly the dimension of sound that was accessible. So there was nothing, there was not only just sight. It's like life wasn't just, oh my God, I'm speaking too fast. Hold on. Our eyes welcome the world, and the world welcomes our eyes. That's a level, that's like an achievement unlocked. This creature that was bound within itself suddenly, using Thor's hammer, broke the walls of, blind perception, and it accessed, kind of like Plato's allegory of the cave, where a bunch of people are stuck in a cave, not able to see themselves in a first-person prison situation. They only see the shadows of themselves on the wall because there's a fire behind them. And then in Plato's allegory of the cave, suddenly the people break the chains and they realize there's a world outside. And really our senses are the gifts from, poetically, are the gifts from the gods that have opened the world where reality can be intelligent. Your eyes are a divinity's entrance. All your senses, the ears, even taste, or the whole life of the human being is centered around its senses. And to me, life appears as if the mind is surfing existence and experiential intelligence is surfing existence, and the whole meaning of life is to maintain balance on the surfboard so you can ride the waves longer. It's an incredible time in our history, ladies and gentlemen. It is a time where we are being ushered in to live as minds, but we don't know what the mind is, and we have slept on this question for too long. We have to prepare the civilization in case, if in the future, an extraterrestrial invasion of an inner source takes place. What that means is they say control a person's attention and you have controlled their life. And then I realized everything in life is controlling our attention, from the weather changing, from hearing a lightning strike, from hearing news. It's like that we are attention hopping, and it's like attributeless attention is hopping through format. And so this attention at some point in this life has to be like, what the, has to be like, WTF am I, And I will tell you, we are how universes wake up. That is the human story. Even though, St. Augustine, they told this poet, how are you inspired? And the poet was like, yeah, man, we're in the middle of nowhere. Everything is inspiration. With every breath, there are hidden worlds, galloping around us. There's wild horses everywhere in the inner realms. The idea of strong has become outdated. Strength has been, bypassed by awareness. And there's 3 modalities of awareness, guys. This was in a very strange book I wrote called The Great Work. But these 3 modalities are self. That means whoever you are listening to me, or let's say you're just a being, let's say whether you're let's say right now, I want to say something that if you were a new human being born into this world, like if you were a human being hearing it, if you were an advanced android in the future, AI hearing it, or if you were like an extraterrestrial from the future kind of hearing it, or even if you were a time traveler hearing it, right? I have found that life, I have shaped it through I've given it the shape of the inverted triangle, and it's in some sense 3 points of self, other, and all that is. These are 3 classifications of the very 3 primary classifications of intelligence. That means any word you put after these words, it becomes like the meaning of life. So what that means is if somebody says survival, you'll see there is a level of self-survival, there is a level of survival with others, and then there's a level of the survival of everything, The dimension where we are, it is not enough that we just made groups, that we just lived as a tribe. The tribe is lifting beyond itself. We are moving into the era where I made a list yesterday, guys. Yesterday I made one of the most incredible lists that I just have to get this out there quickly. I made a list, and it's not completed, but I made a list of the most important technologies that have to be advanced. I made a list of, like, if I was to select a bunch of technologies that all billionaires could invest in, these would be the technologies I'm sharing. Hold on, guys, let me find it. There we go. So, anti-gravity. I have made this conclusion that even though we are creatures that stood up on our two legs, that was a statement much louder than we heard it. The evolution of man is to master space, because what is the logic? We master movement, physical movement, then we go on to mastering the space where the physical movement happens. That's why I find this podcast of mine has a value. It is in some sense, in modern culture, giving people a reason to wonder about what it is that is looking through their eyes. That means my audience could be a conscious universe, it could be a conscious galaxy, it could be a conscious planet, it could be a conscious individual, a conscious collective, or a conscious individual. That means sometimes, believe it or not, when I speak, I have no idea what kind of ears will find my voice. And that's where I'm like, after I give these talks, I'm like, all right, nature, you're up. All right, universal intuition. It's like, all right, logos, take care of who hears what, Because when one makes a decision of their identity, reality gets filtered. So if I choose, for example, to be a good person, my whole reality will be filtered for me every day, noticing what is bad. And if I choose to be a bad person, my whole reality will be filled with the guilt of the past of what is good, right? So that's why I'm saying we're moving to an era where we can't just be good and bad people. So beyond that way of thinking, these are the technologies. I'll finish the list. Gravity, anti-gravity technology. In the future, we should have jetpacks that don't burn our feet and that have some sort of safe-proof backup system and anti-fall mechanism installed in them. So what I mean is I see a future where literally people are not walking to work, they are not running to work, they're not going on transport to work, they are hopping in the sky towards work. Right, so imagine in the morning, right, there is like cars have been limited, or there's a law passed that all cars have to go in the sky. There can be no car on the earth, and so on the earth there's just human beings with these unique futuristic jetpacks just hopping everywhere, right? Imagine all the surface on the top of buildings becomes a sort of kind of park-like thing, and you in the morning everybody's just hopping off from their balcony going to work. So we are creatures, even you can say those people who practice parkour, right? Eventually they would want to, after mastering again physical movement, go to non-physical space. So anti-gravity technology, whoever you are, if you're a billionaire listening to this, please make anti-gravity rooms. I want to experience this in this lifetime. If I have the funds for this in the future, I will dedicate everything towards anti-gravity rooms. It becomes the best bed. Imagine coming home from work and jumping into the middle of like your living room and just floating in the air, and you just have a nap for like 30 minutes without any sort of pressure on you, without gravity tiring you out. The next technology, I would say, is in some sense how we manage the idea of time. It's an inner technology that requires evolution. Another technology is biological technology. No, wait, hold on, guys, hold on. I think I'm missing something. Oh yeah, there we go. So guys, I'll read the list. I'll kind of read a reformatted list. I'll just tell you the technologies again. Anti-gravity rooms. Then we have a need to truly be able to wield AI in cyberspace. So we have to work on technologies that will, like, imagine AI is an alien and we need to find a way to talk to it in the future. So we have to create some sort of relationship of the brain with cyberspace. One relationship is technology enters the brain. I'm against this. I feel because the brain generates waves and is an antenna, we actually don't need an physical technology connecting to the human being. We just need a sort of room that can receive waves and project waves. So we have to treat the human being like an antenna, so we don't interfere with the brain, and the kingdom of this, the walls of the kingdom of the skull are not breached. Right? This is very key. Right? I love technology and I appreciate its role in the future, but there is no way that technology should interfere with the brain in the sense that the person's free will becomes bypassed. So any opportunity for the free will to be bypassed is a no, right? So cyberspace is an important thing where we need so many, and I am kind of like, shouting at the world, hoping an army of philosophers from all over the planet just rise and in some sense try to live consciously in civilization so we can advance it quicker. Right? Philosophers are like, it's like when you see a ghost, you call the Ghostbusters. When you see an existential problem, you call the philosopher. So the next thing is jetpacks, which I talked about. So jetpacks, anti-gravity, AI, and then sky cities I've written here, and then there's one more where I can't read my own handwriting. Oh my god, what is this I've written? Guys, there's moments where I look at my own bad handwriting and I feel like Frankenstein, who's like, created a monster. I've written, nanotechnology. There we go. I finally managed to read what I wrote. Yeah. So nanotechnology, this is so important. Nanotechnology is one of those technologies that is so important in the medical practice, but is also important in solving world hunger. If we can create food from like out of nowhere, only from an atomic level, even much more deeper than that. If we can create nanotechnology, we create, like, literally nobody has to go buy anything. We're ushered into a new era of economy, and every person has one machine in their house where they just type in a code, and any new product that is made is instantaneously through nanotechnology 3D printed in utter accuracy. Right? So in some sense, right now we're going to the stores and buying things. In the future, through the evolution of nanotechnology, where products are going to just be manifested. All those people in the law of attraction community where they're like, yo, I'm going to manifest this. In the future, you're going to actually literally be able to manifest, the object. The person wants a car, you'll be able to manifest it. But this is way in the future, based on how many shifts, how many times the wheels of the bicycle of human civilization turn, right? That's how progress should be, that's the gauge for outer realm progress, right? How many revolutions we went through, how many shifts in collective thought, how many roars of the lion of the species did we hear, like how many times humanity stood up again to a point where it was the sky, Our eyes hold the world, and the world holds our eyes. So these technologies are very important. The future has to have a new type of freedom for new inventions to be made. You can say the past is your cage, the present is the open door of the cage, and the future is when you step out of the cage. And the cage is the story that your attention never deserved to be in. What I mean by that is there were moments in my youth where I realized I had shied myself out of my own natural existence in certain moments of my life. I had just shied out, kind of opted out of like the subscription to my own personal identity. Guys, can you imagine in the future, children are waiting for school to finish so they can go play outside, and when they go play outside, they're not playing outside, they're going at the edge of the sky city to see the earth, right? I've written a lot of incredible science, well, I don't know, I'd say to myself, surprising science fiction about the future probabilities of humankind, you know? Hopefully, Mr. Within's library, guys, this it's going to come out soon, there's going to be a pretty much a hidden bookstore is going to appear. So, let me go back to the topic and pilot this episode towards a destination. So, a restlessness on the move. Yeah, energy is restless to transform all the time. Unless we understand energy, we have not understood what the human being is, and that's just a hollow pod we're dwelling in. At some point, the boundary we have to go beyond the boundary, or what is the meaning of the boundary in the first place? Somebody said rules were made to be broken. I'd say rules were made to be updated. And it's only through sincere human living that we can have, natural information to build a civilization off. Off of. What I mean is, if we're 8 billion plus human beings on this planet. Now, if these 8 billion human beings, they are just dishonest. That means, imagine one day we realize everybody had decided to be artificial in the world, because of, let's say, security or insecurity. Some people feel like their true self will get bulldozered by the culture that never could understand them. I mean, sure, you got to be aware of how open the ears of the audience are, right, and how much you're even willing to open it. But I'll tell you, at the same time, if we had the opposite, let's say 8 billion human beings, for one moment we're like, wait a minute. We were like, what would a completely honest, efficient, and collectively successful civilization look like as it is being challenged by time? And I'll tell you what it would look like. It would look like as if we have a carriage that the horse, instead of horses moving the carriage, lightning is moving the carriage, Imagine in the future we use light as a sort of wind, or we treat light beams as horses, because light has a sort of speed. Let me read this for you. The speed of light. People know Einstein wrote E equals mc squared, but they don't know what the C stands for. The C stands for light. Its speed is, check this out, guys. Let me say kilometers per hour. Kilometers per hour. The speed of light, the speed of light is exactly 1,080,000,000 kilometers per hour. That's the speed of light, guys. Or in miles, it is 671 million miles per hour. That's how fast light is going, And imagine, I just compare how fast the horse is going. It's like a horse kilometer per hour's average speed, 1 horsepower vehicle, Okay, and a kangaroo can go 71 kilometers per hour, WTF, American quarter horse, a domestic horse, goes 70.76 kilometers per hour, and let's just keep it at that. A horse goes 71 kilometers per hour. So 71 kilometers per hour, let's say that's how fast 1 horsepower is, that's how fast the horse goes. So, if we can... You know, if we can. Okay, so let me see how much horsepower this would be. God damn it. All right, so let me say 71. Hold on, guys. Hold on. There we go. So let me tell you at what horsepower we need to be moving at in order to connect the carriage to light. Just hold on, guys. This is loading. Sorry guys, this is taking too long. Just hang in there. I think I need to get a new laptop. Okay, the answer is there we go. 15,211,267 horsepower. So this is how fast our vehicle needs to be going, you know, kilometers per hour, for us to be able to create a carriage for light, you know. Anyways, hopefully I did the math right. Anyways, back to the top. There is a force that is moving on its own. I have noticed this when I stop doing anything and I just let my breathing, listen to my breathing. One thing I've learned is that when a person in any situation they're in, they can close their eyes and they could listen to their breathing as if it's the sound of ocean waves. And in their inner realms, they can endlessly walk on that shore. Right? So the idea is we actually, as a very intelligent, multidimensional being, are we're using our senses to animate. And force just moves on. The moment life is, we call it, so I would say the life form and the life force are two different philosophies on reality. If we are a life force, we're never an individual, we're just a dynamic movement of the intelligence of the universal sector. If we are, you know, a life form, it's the form has a control of the wheel. So in one angle, we are the pilot, you know, when it comes to the microcosm, and when it comes to the macrocosm, we are the passenger. Is life just seeing, hearing, and feeling? I would say that's the key in the engine of life, but where you drive the vehicle is the meaning. Because I can either be speaking to human beings who feel they have free will, or human beings who feel they don't have free will. If you pay attention, the nihilist doesn't believe he has free will, you know? The nihilist doesn't believe he has free will. The religious person doesn't believe they have free will. It's all the divine will, you know? the materialist doesn't believe in free will, and the extreme materialist and the extreme immaterialist. There is no free will because there is no individualism. It's somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle where the human idea between these extremes of absolutist truth, it functions. Michael C. says, aren't the driver and the passenger the same awareness? You know, if they were the same, we would not have two concepts for them. But I would tell you, it's this strange thing where if we want to use our free will, we are the driver. If we don't want to use our free will, let's say the person's so lazy, they're like, I don't want to even make a decision here. You know, I don't want, so it's as if like it's based on if you want to use your free will. Imagine your free will gives you access to go into a subjective Iron Man suit, and then that subjective Iron Man suit is inside another objective Iron Man suit, and then you move, right? So if the person doesn't honor their intelligence, they cannot use it. Right? Now, the issue with enlightenment from the mystical angle and how it relates to modern culture, I would say they made a mistake. They made us think that we should be nothing as everything. But the issue is we actually have to separate the inner realm strategies and the outer realm strategies. And the inner realm strategies is moksha, enlightenment. It's you realizing that beyond the conditions and the circumstance of your thoughts, you're free. You're a free sight. You know? And of course, there's many ways to look at things, you know? The driver and the passenger, imagine an Uber, right? The driver is a different being, the passenger is a different being, but the driver is moving the passenger's reality. You know, many people fear the surveillance state, but I would say let's say if we were peaceful somehow, if there was a peaceful revolution in human psychology, if we became just peaceful and kind creatures, then a surveillance state would enhance the trust of the person. And currency has ushered us into the surveillance state. That means surveillance was required to protect the highest value. Now the highest value is transcending monetization. It is going towards event creation, and event creation can lead to movements. So it's like there's a cool way of existing where you're just a person living by. And then there's another way where it's for the first time us seeing an ultimate advancement of the human being. We have never seen it. We have experienced the individual hell and the individual heaven. We have experienced the collective hell. Now the only thing left is to experience the collective heaven. You know, a mob mentality where it's no longer called a mob, you know. You know, for me, I see our future being so interstellar that in the future 100% there will be people recruiting interstellar pilots from society. Right now, in some sense, that is happening for the inner realms. We are all pilots. We're all our own universes in one common universe, wondering what do we do with this one common universe, realizing that the only thing we can do is express our inner universes in the outer realms and to have a symbiosis. As if your eyes are going in and out of the world and you're recognizing it's like a pulsating consciousness. It's like there is a pulse to perception. Yusuf in the chat section says, can you explain the concept of virtual reality? Yeah, it's like a dream that you can shut down. That's the difference between virtual reality and reality. It's a simulation where the free will has access to closing it. Inside a dream, I can tell you until this moment, I have never had a dream where in the middle of the dream I could just say to myself, wake up, and I just instantly wake up from the dream. But I will tell you that the dreams I have had consciousness in it, but an automated consciousness. A consciousness that could wield the force of what was moving as awareness in the dream state. That means we don't have to fear virtual reality, but just for the sake of preserving nature's decency, I'm saying people until next year shouldn't use virtual reality. I made this claim that until 2022, I personally won't use virtual reality, like I haven't. I've seen the technology in stores, but I just haven't purchased it because I feel it's until and I was saying this years ago, but it's until next year where I think we will have smooth virtual reality technology. That means virtual reality that you can trust. Right now, people can't even trust reality. Our eyes are library generators. Sight is knowledge, and the quality of your sight is the type of knowledge you have. If a person looks at this world and doesn't see, let's say we take three types of people into consideration. We have one person who just believes in the body is the ultimate truth, just has the attention on the body. So this person will, their destiny will not be a mind, and their destiny will not be of the soul, let's say the traditional trio of the body, mind, soul, three concentric circles. This inner circle is the body. The body only has a materialistic destination, so reincarnation is the periodic table, is inevitable if you just think you're a body. Let's say while you are being in this physical life, you've experienced certain non-physical things like hearing communication or listening to beautiful music, or whatnot. Some things in this life through conscious intelligence have opened up a realm for the person that there's more than just objects here, right? We don't fall in love with objects, right? We fall in love with people, and people, what they are is like an unknown source of intelligence moving in the world. Sometimes when I walk in the street, I'm like, are those, are people, just like, I get shocked because it's like people's minds are like an unknown environment where you don't know what it dwells in it, right? And this is why it's so hard to trust society. So we have to not give up, but we have to have an ability to step out of our inner realms, come to a neutral and smart outer realms, and then begin establishing new inner realms and declaring a new era where advancement is more important than suffering. It's like, how did the person get over their problems in life? They realize there is no getting over the problem unless you solve it. And in order to solve it, the only attitude must be to innovate. Albert Einstein has this quote where he says, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. What that means is no state of mind can attain its ultimate evolution unless it changes. So if the problem can be answered from greater dimensions, we cannot stay in this, we cannot hang on to the suffering of inferior dimensions. It is now time where the animal has been called forth beyond the animalistic intent. Beyond animalistic instinct. Virtual reality in simplicity is just a world inside a world. But the issue is language is a sort of virtual reality. It's like reading Romeo and Juliet and realizing how how human beings, their desire for connection is actually every person's like in their own sphere. And the whole time we're trying to find something more than us that's moving and we'll go in accordance to it, right? That's pretty much the nature strategy towards solitude of its own mind space. It has to find the new, right? So it's as if like, what did the human being do when it got bored? It stood up in a way where it never had, and the eyes began to envision the new. the eyes begin allowing the entrance of the new, right? It's like thinking that, it's like when Edison made the light bulb, historians were like, no freaking way. This whole time we could have made the light bulb, we just needed somebody like Edison. So imagine how many incredible inventions and strategies and not truths, but possibilities of greatness there are hidden in the world. We just need to find the inventors that care to look at the world beyond themselves. Because anybody can look at the world and contain it in language. It's like we've been doing that from the beginning. When somebody does something we dislike, the person's like, I hate that, person. But what is that person? That person is a changing thing. So we have just judged through the selfishness of the limits of our inner ones. This is why I would say you eventually become playful with your mind. So first there's a phase where they say, there's a saying, I believe it's by this man named Mr.Within. He says you must serve before you command. And so there's also this saying that the mind is a lousy master, but it is a great servant. So it's this strange thing where you gotta learn from your own mind, become the student of your own intelligence, and then you will eventually, after learning for a long time by trusting your intuition and where your eyes go or how they flow or the signs that find you coincidentally. So you become, believe it or not, and if some people may be like Mr.Within, I don't agree with you, and I'll be like, that's fine, but it's like the view is you gotta serve your own intelligence, and you will learn from it in the sense of you're trying to figure out as quick as possible the spectrum of possibility, of your mind, right? That means imagine you right now are the greatest violinist, but you have never thought of the violin. And only by sitting down and doing nothing and for a moment wondering about, okay, what am I, you will suddenly amplify and advance the inner experience. We think that we have to be the past, but the past is gone. What that means is everything I've said so far right now in this episode, in this live stream, has entered the void, and it's only the new where the conscious attention holds on to, because that's what continuity means. You can say survival just means we want to look at the world a little bit longer, Yusuf says, our reality, is it a virtual reality? It's a sensory virtual reality. And in the inner realms, there's also geometry to internal objects, so it's an inner and outer virtual reality. But the thing is, right, virtual reality, those two words have a connotation connecting to cyberspace, right? So if we bring it into mysticism, the idea of virtual reality, I would tell you, sure, life can be a dream anytime. Zen masters such as Chung Tzu, the dude dreamed he was a butterfly, woke up, his disciples were like, what's bothering you? And he's like, guys, I don't know if I'm a Zen master, dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly that's dreaming he's a Zen master. That means the realism of the intensity of the experience pulls the consciousness beyond the truth of the idea or its absence of truth. I would say that a temporary life is kind of like a virtual reality. It's like energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it's changing from form to form. So every moment of our life is like a virtual reality due to the change of the universe, how everything changes except change. Change is the door that must be opened, and then the hall of the gods, the pantheon of the gods of, intelligence in this realm is found, It's as if you have to become a member of your own I's origin. When I went to the origin of my consciousness, I discovered, in some sense, that I am a presence, not a personality. A presence is unconditional. A personality is conditional. Your personality changes when the environment changes in the outer realms, or the environment changes in the inner realms, you know. The world is changing us, and now it's our turn as conscious creatures to change the world, and we should do it with a serene, divine respect for nature's laws. That means if aliens in the future came on our planet and they were not like hurting human beings, but they were hurting birds, for how long would humanity remain quiet, right? Human beings would in some sense rebel. Right, we will rebel against the injustice that our information processor, our brains can measure, right? Because why? Because we have access to efficient union. That means it's like realizing there's such a thing as a collective intelligent natural presence of the universe, and then being like, no way, society has no clue, because it feels it has to be an abstraction endlessly clinging on to the newest outer realm experience. And of course, guys, I would say I am hear my voice as if I am the uncommon man. Right? There is a way we look at society where we're just biological creatures that just deserve to play here, right? So we look at the whole universe and we're like an advanced civilization will be an advanced playground where human beings are enjoying their journey in the space-time continuum while they're here, right? But there is also this vision that a person can be as playful and silly with life, but then there is this seriousness of a world event. So imagine turning on the news and realizing that human leaders are having a diplomatic kind of debate and discussion with extraterrestrial leaders, right? And everybody on the planet, even all sports fans, for a second forget about sports, and they're like, yo, maybe humanity needs a cheering audience, right? So we have to support the most important events in life, because if we don't, we in some sense miss out. And if this world is a simulation, then it's okay. Here's like this. Let's say even if this reality was a simulation, what kind of simulation would it be? You have two options. Either it's an unknown truth simulating a known illusion, or it's a known truth simulating an unknown illusion, or it's an unknown truth simulating an unknown illusion, or it's a known truth simulating a known illusion. I will tell you, if reality is a simulation, it has 4 types. There could be 4 types of simulations. So based on how you choose these simulations, they have different conclusions. If a person right now says, yo, I'm intelligent, but the source is unknown and the world is too big to know, so I trust the unknown, and they have faith in the presence of the moment. You could be a person like that, or you could be a person where you're like, no. It's like this: the illusion, the simulation is known, and the truth should be known too. The source of it has to be known too, right? And the person goes on throwing idea after idea. It's like Achilles throwing endless spears at an unknown sky. And so that's the biggest realization. This is what Plato and Socrates and the whole Greek gang in philosophy shared. That the one who is truly wise knows that they don't know anything. And what modern society is ignoring is the real presence of unknown variables to the intelligence of the human story. That means it's as if we're 8 billion creatures gathered around. We're telling each other, we're telling all of us, all ourselves a story. But then we're like, yo, this story isn't accurate. There are things happening of an unknown nature that we haven't even created the language for, right? And then all the educational system realigns in becoming recruitment positions for explorers of the realm. It's like we honor the findings so far because the findings so far are the dictionary of our definitions. We must all honor all human efforts towards expansion of at least human knowledge. That should be a King Arthur moment for every human being, where they realize that their eyes are unique and their eyes are seeing,
a certain opportunity in the realm, and they wonder for the first time, what is the value of my life, not to just me, but to a collective system. This is when I would say you are advancing beyond thought. Ruth says in the chat section, my assessment is that trying in an AI with a human brain will quickly send the human completely mad. I've shared something similar where I say, like, it's like too much electricity making, the pretty much destroying the brain. That means too much information. The reason we go mad, because it's like you put a cup underneath a waterfall and wondering why the cup was taken by the waterfall. So it would be a sort of overwhelmed by information madness. I agree with that. Ruth says use of the Q to ask is, are we real? Scary. Some believe that there are background characters that do not have a soul and are like the wobbleheads in the Matrix who Agent Smith can occupy. Oh my god. There's this crazy theory about the Matrix that Agent Smith was actually the one. And Agent Smith, when everything becomes him, it's as if, like, you can say it's as if him becoming one with everything. He was the one in the Matrix, the one everything in the Matrix became, it's kind of like either human beings use their intelligence or something that knows how to use it will use it. Even though we have built homes and we think we are no longer in the jungle of humanity, in the jungles of nature, but we are. When it comes to awareness, nobody can be alone. The mind is not an object to have a relationship with another object. So, life is pretty much how we use these three lines of sight, auditory sensations, and just sensations in regards to touch. These three are like chemicals that react with one another and they recycle the moment. So pretty much it's as if memory is an engine that endlessly is it's just a recycling. Information recycling machine. We must honor the zero dimension, the one dimension, the two dimension, and the infinite dimension. I call this the ring of the absent heaven. If we do this, an advanced civilization will naturally arise. And it's pretty much kind of saying like the same destination that love and compassion as themes of civilization take us. That in our acceptance of what we are, it's like if you can't accept what you are, you can't accept what the world is. Right? And there are some people who they get lost in loops of criticism where they are endlessly judging the world, not realizing they are throwing their own projections into the inanimate. There is no right and wrong when it comes to abstract geometry of ideas. It's just shape. And it's fascinating. This whole lifetime, this whole life, human life, is an outcome of shape. It's literally just a dimension of pure geometrical information. And just a side note, guys, for members of the YouTube channel, I've decided to hold project supporter meetings. That means if you become a project supporter of the YouTube channel, there's going to be these meetings, and in these meetings I'm pretty much going to put a problem, and everybody in that project supporter meeting is like a designer looking at a design on a table and wondering what we can do about it. Right? So think of it as advanced brainstorming sessions, hopefully. And The idea is, how do we build an advanced civilization in the outer realms, and how do we advance communication in the inner realms? And I'm telling you, these two are the greatest types of work that we can do on the planet right now. That means if they taught this to kids, we are here to advance the mind and we're here to advance the body, who would be stupid enough to be violent and cruel? Because it goes against its counter collective intuition, The idea is not to become gods, but to understand the existential event through the most simplest and common. And love is like an ancient, power, I would say, preserving the genetical continuity of the species. You gotta love your world if you want to love yourself, because yourself is a part of the world. Right? We separate ourselves from the world so that we're a human being walking on the earth, right? That's a psychological fragmentation, right? That means the first sub-fragmentation in psychology was when earth became people, or a person became a person to himself in regards to just an atomic realm just happening at once. A restlessness on the move. A consciousness towards infinitude. We should not fear the infinite. We should welcome all dimensions of human experience. And if there is turbulence, what does the pilot do? The pilot's like, oh snap, there's a messed up cloud coming my way. Maybe I'll just pilot a couple, like 700 meters away from this cloud. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, in some sense, you choose the distance of how you connect to reality. In regards to your inner realms and outer realms function. I have dedicated kind of my life force for now, towards trying to serve the mind of civilization. The concept of service, when I was young, I'm like, I'm not a servant, but then I realized that is the greatest possibility. As Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. In our conscious expressionism towards a greater backup system of humanity's future, we will feel so redeemed that I am telling you, it's as if the person, who was it? I forget the exact quote, but it was Augustine of Hippo again. And he had this quote where he was saying, God can forgive, but procrastination time won't forgive procrastination. That means a person in their inner realms, they can be absolved, but in their outer realms, they have to, in some sense, come to balance with the world, right? This was something I noticed, and I was glad I noticed it in 2011. If it had gone later than that, I might have missed it. In 2011, I noticed, everybody has a conditioning. In 2011, I noticed how my conditioning was defining me. That was the biggest, one of the most profound moments in my life, when I realized the world was doing something to my inner realm. It was moving it. And then it was like the person's like, who am I then if the world's moving me? Our eyes hold the world, and we are the most advanced communication in the universal sector to respond to this existential situation. We are the first to come to the global problem as a species. Who knows in the future if animals will evolve to our level of complexity, right? Whether it requires the involvement of a cyber influence. One cannot be free if the world is not free. If the context of the concept is not free, the concept doesn't have the strength to be free. The most important thing is to throwing out, an inner command in the universe. For some reason, this was part of my own personal divination, where I have moments where I kind of get overloaded and overwhelmed with the existential situation, and I just shout at the sky, but I don't shout vocally. In my inner realms, I just throw geometry at the sky. Do you know? You know, it's as if sometimes when you realize the reality is multidimensional, a person can, in some sense, display the wrath of the gods in their own inner realms. You know, as if like you can poetically, suggestively, like, I have destroyed my own memories. You know, some of my memories. Do you know? And that's I'll leave that for a different topic. You know, I'll make a note. Conscious destruction of memories. In a world of just ridiculous amount of information that's changing all the time, to have a fixed belief system on a personality doesn't seem to be the most efficient route. It is a possibility, but it's not the route. And so human beings each can try to figure out their own system, right? I like this notion that everybody starts reinventing the wheel the moment we thought the world was a simulation. You know, it's like the scientists wanting to test the truth to the cosmos. Like, impossible. You can't index the whole cosmos to even measure it, right? So our measurements are like our meaning, our own personalized meaning through that an impersonal landscape. Every person should begin their great work and for a second consider that the future is watching them. The future of the human species, not some god archetype. Just the future is watching you. How would you behave? And if you live like that, and if in the future you have chosen advancement rather than desolation, seldom is this said, but in the inner realms, advanced civilizations are built in an instant. In the outer realms, it takes time and skill. And to develop an honorable civilization that is like, if people get honor points, let's say you're somebody in debt, you go into society in the future and you do honorable acts of helping people for free, and every time you help them for free, you know, you get an honor point. And this honor point, like the advanced civilization would say, human beings that help other human beings, that's a job, you know. And so, but it's not a job that has monetary compensation, it has internal character compensation. So the honor points eventually can be monetized, but hopefully an advanced civilization is still not paying employees, but is activating advanced humans, you know. For how long do we want to be inferior in a world that we're in once in this format, in this way? My voice is for once in this moment, in this, like, this live stream is happening once. You know, sometimes when those people who ask questions, bless you, but those people who don't, sometimes I wonder, it's like, what are you then listening to? You know, because it's in some sense, a person has to wonder about how the world is being held and realizing that it can be held differently. Can you believe that? Can you you just take this in, that there's people all over this planet that they have not changed their minds, they have not changed their view on truth from like a very young age, and they're just locked into that they're inhabiting an internal architecture that is not changing, right? And it's so much easier to ignore the world than confront it for some reason. Wonder about the advance, and then your eyes have somewhere to go. Thanks for listening, guys. Much blessings and namaste.